Descent of the Demon God. By Hanjo Wiolia. Chapter 12. Scout Offer. Part 1. 6:10 a.m. 5th floor of Shenyang Hospital, in a ward. There was a man lying down with a haggard face. It was Li Myong, the leader of the 3rd Squad. As the emergency room surgeon said, he underwent thorough examination, and even though he suffered gunshot wounds, he only needed a week to recover. Since there's no infection and you've received regenerative treatment, you can return to work after a week of rest in the hospital. After a week, he would be discharged and asked to work at a desk. He was called Lucky. Shut up. The sound of a TV playing loudly annoyed him. He couldn't tell them to turn down the volume because he shared the room with 6 other people. And the room was mostly filled with elderly people. Not a single person is asleep. The elderly women and men were all awake. Damn it. I have gunshot wounds. At least put me in a single-person room. He groaned. As soon as a week of rest was put down, he was put into a multi-person ward. CRCK. He moved for food. After not eating last night and getting treatment, he woke up at dawn because of sleeping on an empty stomach. A nurse entered. "How is everyone feeling?" Li Myong asked the nurse. "When can I have a meal?" Meal? Give me a second." The nurse looked down at the chart. "If the doctor comes for his rounds and then declares you are in good condition, I think you will be given porridge." Ugh. Li Myong looked like he was going to die. He was starving, and he couldn't wait until lunch. He knew he shouldn't, but he still asked. "Then, can I smoke?" Then, he heard it from the TV. Breaking news. We have unfortunate news. Around dawn, the authorities announced that Sun Mengdao and the other members of the Firehead organization, who were arrested for drug sales, escaped from the Public Safety Bureau. What? Li Myong's face stiffened. On the screen, the director's press conference began, starting with CCTV footage. Song Weikong was killed as he was fleeing with the video copy of the crimes. The Public Security Bureau will not ignore this. Damn it. The news of the escape was absurd, and his direct boss had died. What the hell happened? Something happened within the 12 hours of him being hospitalized. Li Myong jumped up out of the bed. "Patient." The nurse panicked. Pushing her aside, Li Myong spoke. "I need to be discharged immediately." "That can't. Pack." Despite the nurse's words, Li Myong pulled the infusion needle out of his arm. He staggered out of the room while blood dripped from the spot where the needle was inserted. The nurse shouted, "Patient Li Myong." 6:45 a.m. Shenyang City Public Security Bureau. The gate wasn't even opened, but the atmosphere of the Public Security Bureau was close to a funeral home. And the staff, which belonged to it, were summoned early to deal with the situation. Oh my. Oh my. Wail. Wail. Does it make sense that I can't even see the body of my husband after being told the news? The families of the deceased were crying and wailing in front of the office. Due to how the bodies were being sent to autopsy, they weren't shown to the families. Originally, civilians would need to give permission for an autopsy, but when police risk their lives, they receive an autopsy right away. The access to the bureau was blocked with a tape prohibiting the entry of the families. Was that the only CCTV footage, or is the bureau hiding something? Why are they controlling the press? Reporters were gathered outside. After the press conference, the reporters of each media group came to ask numerous questions. And because of them, the people of the bureau who were summoned in the morning were having a hard time. Once the results of the investigation are released, an announcement will be made to the press. Until then, reporters, step back. The police, controlling them, shouted. Despite repeating the same line for the last 30 minutes, the reporters showed no signs of backing down. That was when a reporter shouted while pointing to a black sedan entering through the side driveway. "I don't get it. You said that no one should pass except for the people related to it, then that car, which doesn't even belong to the bureau. Why did you let it in? What is this? Let us in too." Thanks to one person's scream, the other reporters shouted. The police officers who were blocking the reporters were shocked. Meanwhile, on the first floor of the bureau, someone was looking at the confused faces of his men. The man with sparse gray hair was Sang Yu-gun, the director of Shenyang City Public Security Bureau. He looked at someone and spoke. "So what you want to say is that the Firehead gang and the person in the interrogation room in a weird costume are on a team? Deputy Director?" He was talking to Ho Il-kyung. His posture while sitting on the sofa was extremely uncomfortable. A doctor from the medical team who came to work early relocated his shoulders and bones, which were dislocated, but it was just a temporary measure because his cartilage was damaged. However, he was the only survivor of the night. He couldn't even go to the hospital because he was called for interrogation. Didn't I say that before? Director. The fifth team was ordered to isolate that murum, step. Step. The sound of the director's shoes. With a small light beam, a 3D image began to appear on the table. The CCTV footage of the fourth and fifth interrogation rooms in the basement. Oh? In that video, Ho Il-kyung was sitting on a chair in the interrogation room as if he lost his soul. Drool. Drool. And he was snoring too. He was told that all of the footage was deleted, but that didn't seem to be the case. Do I sleep like that? Even he couldn't understand how he slept peacefully amid the chaos. Flustered, he tried to explain. Director, bang. Director Sang Yu-gun slammed the desk with his fist. There are a total of 2 CCTV images of Chief Song Wei-kong. It's this video, and then the one given to the media. I can't show this video to the media because the prestige of the bureau will fall. Do you understand what I'm talking about? He could. There was a USB in Song Wei-kong's mouth, which made the officers guess that the accident occurred when Song Wei-kong was running away with the USB. Thanks to that, Song Wei-kong was being praised. Even the head of the violent crimes, who was such an honest man, made such sacrifices. Does it make sense for the Deputy Director of Public Security to be sleeping inside the interrogation room? Ah, Director. You're mistaken. I don't want to hear it. After the interrogation by Squad 3 is done, there will be an indefinite suspension until the higher-ups give any instructions. At that, Ho Il-kyung jumped up and hurriedly knelt in front of the director and spoke with teary eyes. Director. You're really mistaken. Look at me. My shoulders and arms are gone. I was caught by the Murim warrior, and I suffered all kinds of humiliation. Knock. Knock. Then someone knocked on the door. Since the deputy director was in the room, the director said, I don't know what it is, but come back later. Director, this is urgent. Saying that it was urgent allowed the man to come in. In the meantime, as if nothing happened, Ho Il-kyung went back to the sofa nonchalantly and whistled as he looked to his right. A male detective hurried into the room with an envelope. What is urgent, HM? The director's expression stiffened at the mark of Shenyang City Hall on the documents, which were taken out of the envelope. At the bottom were a name and seal. At the same time, in the Public Security Violent Crime Squad room, on the sofa was a man in a neat suit, having coffee. It was Jo Yu-sung, who promised to get Chen Yo-won out within 12 hours. Phew. There was a man in his early 40s with a beard in front of him. He was Oh Yu-bong, the first team leader of the Violent Crime Squad. Oh Yubong spoke to Jo Yusong, who was drinking coffee. I see there's something you want to believe in. Will you wake up from that dream? As you know, the current situation isn't that good, and our director is a wonderful man who does not give in to external pressure or any kind of request. It will not go your way. It was because Jo Yusong brought an official letter requesting the release of that person who was imprisoned in the interrogation room. He even brought a lawyer from a well-known law firm in Shenyang City. I know, right? Let's wait and see. Jo Yusong smiled. Team leader Oh Yubong clicked his tongue, looking at how the man was speaking provocatively. That young man. But this time, Oh Yubong knew that things wouldn't happen the way the man wanted them to. The current situation of the bureau was messed up, but the person in the interrogation room was someone the city hall ordered them to investigate. So why would they want the man to leave? Huh? Are you done with your coffee? Pack your papers, and let me escort you out. It's hard with all the reporters and the barricades. It was then. Team leader. The detective who was sent to the director's office came back into the room. But that wasn't it. Why? Director Sang Yugun followed him. A salute. Oh Yubong immediately got up and saluted. Sang Yugun lightly nodded and looked at Jo Yusong. Chief Joe. It has been a long time. Have you been well? Director, you must have been working hard. Sorry for suddenly coming in. Jo Yusong got up and bowed. Judging from their conversation and the tone, it seemed they were acquainted. I apologize in advance for not being able to properly entertain you in this situation. But fine. Was the request letter written by Director Yoon? That's right. I brought the seal, so let's get this moving. What? Oh Yubong was shocked. He thought his director would never accept that request. But this was something he never expected. The director came down to his room to approve the letter. What the hell? While he was shocked, Jo Yusong looked at him and smiled. A smile which said that he won. Ding dong. The elevator door opened, and Chen Yoan appeared along with Oh Yubong. Jo Yusong, who was waiting in the lobby, bowed to the man. You have been through a lot. Mr. Musong. Musong? Jo Yusong sent a message to Chen Yoan, who was puzzled. I didn't know your name while creating the ID, so I put a temporary name. Once you let me know your actual name, we will edit it. Chen Yoan nodded. But on the inside, he thought it was a clever name. The temporary name he was given was similar to his descendant's name, Chun Musong. Who's the one next to you? This is Li Hyun, a lawyer at KD Law Firm, who is serving as an advisor at our headquarters. He struggled a lot with the paperwork last night. I'm Li Hyun. Lawyer Li Hyun gave a light bow. After introducing him, Jo Yusong pointed to the outside of the building. Let's get out of this place now, so I'll take you to the head office right away. As Jo Yusong said, the lobby was full of staff and detectives. They were all conducting an investigation, drawing white lines on the lobby floor, and collecting the blood. To Chen Yoan, who was about to follow Jo Yusong out, the first team leader of the crime squad spoke. Oi, historical costume. I don't know who you are, but know that this isn't the end. Be careful. I, the first team leader of the violent crime squad. Oh Yusong is warning you. It was a warning as he was leaving. When Chen Yoan tried to speak up, Jo Yusong and the lawyer said there was no need to deal with the man and led him to a black sedan. Even when Chen Yoan got into the car, Oh Yubong stared at him with an angry goblin-like face. The car door closed, and Jo Yusong, who was sitting next to him, calmly said, You have been very patient. Many eyes are watching you, so it wouldn't look good if you got into an argument with the leader of the violent crime squad within the bureau. That was when Chen Yoan, who was looking out the window, pretended to grab something. Ugh. Oh Yubong, who turned around to enter the building, grabbed his stomach and fell down. The investigators were shocked and tried to support him. This, no matter how you looked at it, it must have been something Chen Youwon did. Flustered, Jo Yusong told the driver. Start the car. Let's go. The quick-witted driver started the car and stepped on the gas. When they got on the road after barely passing through the barricades and the reporters, Jo Yusong took a deep breath and said, I understand your feelings, but if you do though, what time is it? Huh? What time? Jo Yusong, who was about to speak, went stiff at Chen Youwon's question. He was puzzled, thinking that Chen Youwon would hold him accountable for being late. If it's because of the promise I made, I apologize. I tried to deal with it as quickly as possible. Jo Yusong touched the smartphone on his wrist. 7:17 a.m. It's 7:17. We arrived at around 6, but we had to wait inside for it to get approved, so many excuses. Huh. At Chen Youwon's cold words, Jo Yusong sighed. While working in the Human Resources Department, he experienced many different types of people when recruiting talents. Is he trying to aim for something higher? He's a lot smarter than I thought. For a second, he wanted to ignore Chen Youwon and walk away, but he invested a lot into him. And he already reported to the director. Yes. I lost. I can't help it. Obviously, there's the thing where I broke the appointment time, so I will tell the director when negotiating your salary. It was before his words even finished. The flexible smartphone that Jo Yusong had on his left wrist cracked. In the moment of shock, his left wrist had fallen on the car's floor. Quack! Jo Yusong screamed in pain. In his usual cold voice, Chen Youwon said, I was trying to tone it down, but you talk a lot. HAA. Since you said you worked all night for me, I ended this with your wrist and not your arm. Chen Youwon's way of showing mercy. However, Jo Yusong couldn't say anything. Ugh, he really cut. He regretted not taking the warning seriously. Chapter 13. Scout Offer. Part 2. Kuwak. A scream filled the car. The driver and lawyer Lee Hyun, who were in the front seats, couldn't hide their shock. Ah, no. What are you doing? Chief. They couldn't understand Chen Youwon's actions as they didn't know about the 12 hours promise. Keek. The driver hastily hit the brakes, moved into the road's shoulder, and stopped. The driver turned back with a rage-filled face and tried to yell at Chen Youwon. Shit. Don't bother. Let's go to the hospital. Jo Yusong beat him to it and sent a message to the driver. But chief. Isn't he insane? Shockingly, it looked like the driver was also trained in martial arts. The driver responded in an enraged tone. But, chief, you went through so much trouble all night to get him out, why would he cut off your hand? I told you it's enough. Start the car. The driver hesitated for a moment and looked at the pale face of Jo Yusong, and grabbed the steering wheel. There was no need for him to make Jo Yusong, who was in pain, angry. I looked down on this man. As the driver thought, Jo Yusong was suppressing his anger too. In the beginning, he couldn't compete with his skills and couldn't even speak out due to the hasty process of recruiting Chen Youwon. A warning. Jo Yusong thought that this was Chen Youwon's warning. The price of taking advantage of other people and breaking promises. Maybe he's not a sect-oriented person. If he had been a sect-oriented person, there was no way he could act so cold-hearted. Even then, Jo Yusong decided to proceed carefully in the future, considering that this man wasn't an ordinary person. Tat-attack. As the pain became tolerable, Jo Yusong pressed on his left arm's blood points. The blood, which was gushing out, stopped flowing. Jo Yusong took out a handkerchief and wrapped it around the cup part. And then tried to pick up the severed hand which was on the car's floor. Float. The hand floated and landed on the seat. Jo Yusong was shocked. He felt it at first sight, but it seemed like he was more than a superior master. Phew. I need to talk it out. They were already on the way to the hospital, but Jo Yusong decided to ask for Chen Youwen's understanding. Thank you. I apologize again, but before we go to the head office, Chen Youwen answered before he finished. Don't worry about it, and stop by the hospital. For a moment, Jo Yusong was confused. I remember saying it telepathically. There was no way one could hear the telepathic messages of others. Jo Yusong, who thought that it was strange, dispelled his doubts. But if he thought about it, isn't it a normal reaction to head to the hospital after someone's wrist was cut off? He decided that he was overreacting. Shenyang City Public Security Bureau. Violent Crime Squad 3. No. What kind of bullshit is this? The man, whose voice was so loud that it could be heard outside the office, belonged to Li Myong, the team leader of the 3rd Squad. Detective Dan Young-hyen, a short-haired female detective with bruises on her face, spoke to the team leader by making silent gestures. Shoo. Team leader, please lower your voice. Do you think I can control myself? Quack, damn it. Li Myong held his throbbing shoulder. It had been only a few hours since he got treatment, so the pain remained. The attention of all the people in the 3rd Squad was diverted to Li Myong. It would be strange if they weren't worried for the man who had been shot and ran into the office wearing a hospital dress. Firstly, team leader. You're hurt, so please go back to the hospital. We just finished the interrogation, so we also only noticed that now, but there's nothing we can do. Dan Young-hyen tried to comfort him. She could understand why Li Myong was angry, but there was nothing they could do about it. The incident was so significant that every personnel was needed, and even the special department of the Liaoning province's public security was sent. In the end, it's the task for the special team. Special team? My foot. Including the chief, at least 8 people from our department have died. How can this be those bastards' task? Does it make sense to release the most likely culprit just because of external pressure? She let out a sigh at Li Myong's outburst. Because of his stubbornness, Li Myong was known to be the dumbhead in the Public Security Bureau. Huh. It's starting again. But she didn't hate him. Although he had a wild mouth and didn't follow the rules, he was still a kind and loyal man. Of course, that was something only the detectives of Squad 3 thought. Looking at the other detectives, the female detective said. Once again, the team leader is acting like this. Take him to the hospital and I'll talk with the director myself. Huh? With those words, Li Myong got up from his seat and sprinted outside the office. The bewildered detectives blocked him, but he overpowered them. Thud. Shit. Ouch. The male detectives were knocked down with a simple push. Li Myong is a famous martial artist on the team, but he was too strong for a man who suffered from a gunshot wound. Are you trying to hurt the patient? And you, do some exercises. With those words, Li Myong ran out of the office. Shit. Hey. Hurry up and catch the team leader. The detectives of Squad 3 were bewildered and followed him. But Li Myong was so fast that he managed to reach the front door of the director's office. Even though the female secretary stopped him, he still went into the room. I'm telling you not now. He's on a business call right now. Director. Director Sang Yu-gun, who was on a call, frowned at the sudden actions of Li Myong. Actually, he wasn't shocked. It wasn't the first time this happened. Lee Myung would directly rush into the director's room or deputy director's room whenever something didn't make sense and even call them cowards. Move to university hospital? I get it. For now, keep your eyes open and watch everything. Beep. He immediately ended the call. The female secretary who followed grabbed Lee Myung's arm and tried to drag him out. That was when the director got up from his seat and gestured that it was okay. Secretary Lim, you can leave. Ah, I understand. When the lady closed the door and left, the director opened his mouth with an unpleasant expression. What are you doing? How many times have I told you to not barge in? If it was any other detective, they would have been flustered, unable to do anything. However, this man, Lee Myung, is dumbheaded. The chief is dead. Director. So, what do you want? Is the director really going to talk like that? If you act like this, how can public security be run? With a disappointed look, he continued. If you have received an interrogation report from my team members, won't you know? Regardless of the CCTV footage, only 2 people survived. If you think with common sense, he's likely the culprit. If there are no problems after the investigation, it would have been right to let him go, but that isn't the case here. Lee Myung shook his head at the director, who said nothing. I respect the director. A true public security officer never gives in to pressure. But in the end, I think I've realized that you are the same as everyone else. Lee Myung, who said everything he wanted, turned to leave the office when the director stopped him. Stop. Lee Myung stopped, wondering what the man had to say. Do you see me as someone who would succumb to external pressure and release someone? Sorry? The director turned the monitor on his desk towards Lee Myung. What Lee Myung saw made his eyes shine brightly. Shenyang City University Hospital. Inside the orthopedic medical examination room. A middle-aged doctor who was examining the severed left hand side. Phew, was this really caused by a blade? Roughly similar. But, why are you asking? Jo Yusung was puzzled by the doctor's question. The doctor enlarged the cross-section of the arm. There were 2 photos of the left hand and left arm on the monitor, which had been perfectly cut off. Even if it was caused by a blade, the human muscles and bones are so tough that the nerves and blood vessels become haggard and distorted, but that isn't the case here. The cut is so clean as if they were anatomical specimens. That was why the doctor was surprised. At that, even Jo Yusung admired Chen Yoan. Because he used internal energy, he assumed that he had excellent swordsmanship, but he didn't expect it to be that amazing. If this is the case, I think we can proceed directly with a single-sided junction regeneration surgery without surgery to align nerves. Conjugation of the severed parts is a complicated process. It isn't a single operation, but several operations. However, the doctor said that only joint surgery and regenerative treatment were needed. After the operation, you will be hospitalized for 3 days, and if the result is good, you will be able to use your fingers like before. There couldn't be more fortunate news than that. It would be nice to have surgery done right away, but there is still work to be done. Despite the doctor's recommendation to have surgery at noon, Jo Yusung asked for it to be held late in the afternoon and only received first aid. As Jo Yusung left the room, the nurse whispered, "Doctor, he's a martial artist, right?" Indeed, as expected of a nurse who worked here for 8 years. He worked in orthopedics, so there was no way he was unaware of such wounds. There wasn't a single person who would be that calm if their hand was cut off, except for Murim warriors and gatekeepers. If not from a martial artist, how can a cut like that happen? Ho ho ho. The middle-aged doctor, who looked at the monitor and saw the cut, smiled. Well, that martial artist who did that must have been through a lot too. At the same time, the lobby of the hospital. An old man with white hair was sitting in a chair waiting to be called. Compared to the wrinkles, the way the man sat with a straight back was unusual. And instead of a cane, the old man held a green sword. Looking at how heavily it was decorated, one could see that it wasn't an ordinary stick. Whoa! He's a warrior. That old man. Is he a Murim warrior? No matter who looked at it, the old man was a Murim warrior. Perhaps he was accustomed to it. The old man seemed to be okay with all the attention. That was when someone rushed over to him. A man in his late 30s, dressed in a dark blue suit, greeted the old man with clasped hands. Moyang Isun greets, Elder Peng. Oh. Moyang. Those who knew even a little about Murim would have been shocked by those names. The direct descendants of the Moyang clan and the Ping clan, two of the 5 great clans of the forces of justice. Of course, things like clans aren't used anymore. The man in his late 30s, Moyang Isun, was the managing director of the Yun Company, the largest corporation in Shenyang. Don't call me by that title. Just call me like you usually do. He, is that so? Still, you're the next president of the company. The descendants of the 5 great clans, they frequently got to meet each other. Moyang Isun spoke while looking at the number on the table next to Pungnung Jayam. I don't get it. If you had informed me about this in advance, my people would have quickly handled the payment. Why didn't you? Hoo, that would be too burdensome. I'm here for a simple checkup, Come to think of it, you kept staring at someone as you entered. Do you know him? Peng, who had good eyesight, found that Moyang Isun was looking at a certain someone. A man wearing a cast as he injured his left arm. If it was just an ordinary person, Elder Peng wouldn't have even cared about it, but that man was a Murim warrior. Yes. He's a business acquaintance. Is that so? It felt like he avoided getting into details, so Elder Peng didn't pay it much mind. Because it was none of his business. But, Elder is really great. What do you mean? Did you come here because of the gate warning? To come get a consultation, despite it being taxing for an 80-year-old. Hoo, what kind of wording is that? In a world where the gates are open, if old people like me can help, that's more than enough. At that time, Pungnung Jayam's face went stiff. He was going to ask Moyang Isun about something, but Peng suddenly moved out of the lobby. Elder. Moyang Isun followed him. Peng, who escaped the hospital building, was looking elsewhere. There were a few people. Whoa. Looks like there was an accident. Moyang Isun, who reached his side, spoke. On the side that Elder Peng looked at was a grand RV stopped by a power pole. It looked like the front tire was punctured. Shockingly, both the front wheels of the car were torn to shreds. Did you come out after hearing the accident? At Moyang Isun's question, Pungnung Jayam muttered with trembling eyes. I just felt a tremendous energy a moment back. Didn't you feel it? Moyang Isun's eyes lit up at those words. Because it was the first time that Elder Peng, one of the top 100 martial artists registered in the Murim department of the Chinese government State Council, was shocked like this. Maybe one of them? Moyang Isun pointed to 2 men who came out of the crashed RV. Maybe it was because of the accident, but the 2 men who got out of the RV had no energy. At that, Elder Peng shook his head and said, No. It appeared for a moment and then disappeared. With those words, Pungnung Jayam clenched the sword in his hand. Did this Pungnung Jayam miss a thunder user? He was the master of thunder. The black sedan left the hospital grounds. Zhou Yusong, who had a cast on his left arm, asked Chen Youan, who closed his eyes with his arms crossed. By any chance, the flat tires of that RV, was that your doing? Chen Youan didn't deny it. It was because Zhou Yusong had clenched his fist. He knew it, but he still wanted to ask. And Chen Youan stayed silent. He was frustrated. That was when the driver sent him a message. Chief Joe. Even if not for that, I was going to tell you once I confirmed it, but that gray RV. It had been following us since we left the Public Security Bureau. What? At those words, Jo Yusong's eyes widened as he looked at Chun Yo-won. Chapter 14. Scout Offer. Part 3.
And he noticed that? Jo Yusong couldn't hide his shock. Of course, he couldn't focus on what was happening around him, thanks to his severed wrist. However, the fact that Chun Yo-won, who was always looking ahead, managed to notice that meant that he was very attentive. Is a superior master this great? Among Murim people who are strong, only a handful of people manage to reach the superior realm. To reach that level, one would have to pass many levels. Jo Yusong has constantly been learning martial arts since his childhood, but he was only able to reach the supermaster level in his mid-20s. People around him said that it was a great achievement, but this young man in a historical costume made him feel like nothing. He only looks 20 years old. Chun Yo-won looked to be only in his early 20s. The world is so unfair. It was hard to reach the supermaster level in the mid-30s, even while working for a company. Because everyone has a role to play. Before going insane, he decided to organize these thoughts. Right now, if he learned the real level of Chun Yo-won, he might die of shock. So the public security is keeping an eye on us? The director had come and even signed and stamped the request, which was pretty unexpected. He thought it was because of the accident which happened inside the bureau. Jo Yusong glanced at Chun Yo-won, who had his eyes closed. He didn't think that Chun Yo-won had anything to do with the Firehead gang of the forces of evil escaping. It was because they were people who made a living selling drugs. There was pressure from above, but they ignored it. The director of public security, Jo Yusong, ended up thinking too lightly of him. The Public Security Bureau was an institution under the State Council. We'll have to cut the string before it gets more tangled. While Jo Yusong was deep in thought, Chun Yo-won still had his eyes closed. On the surface, it looked like he was meditating. But his eyelids trembled faintly. The material has been organized into the brain, it is 100% complete. Nano's voice echoed in his head. Once they were out of the Public Security Bureau, he was able to connect to the Wi-Fi. From the moment they left the bureau, Chun Yo-won had Nano organize all the information about the present era. It was missing some things, but the basics were all there. And after that, Nano completed the task of distinguishing the knowledge of the present and future, which was built in, and transferred it to Chun Yo-won. I have a headache. Because of the large amount of information that has been transferred at once. Since the development of the internet, this era is called the information age, so the amount of information present was enormous. It was so vast that it couldn't be compared with the number of techniques and books transferred to his brain in his era. It was natural to have a headache. My head is all messed up. The transfer was successfully completed, but he got dizzy when a lot of information was placed into his brain. Even for him, who reached the Heavenly Master level, it was too much to handle. Complex social structure. That was the opinion of Chun Yo-won, who had all the information transferred into his brain. This era was more complex than his time. It was more restrictive in a way. This society has great resistance to murder or injury. Chun Yo-won, who lived in savagery, couldn't understand it. This era was a world where there were too many restrictions caused by laws, social notions, and morals. Was the non-aggression treaty broken down into this structure? Looking at the transferred information, the Murim warriors also seemed to live their lives by following the laws and the ideal social structure. The main reason behind that was the fact that Murim warriors were affiliated with the government. The registration of Murim. Such a cumbersome system. All Murim warriors had to register with the Murim department within the government's state council. Only then, with a few restrictions, were they allowed to carry a weapon. It doesn't matter. The Murim department seemed like it graded Murim warriors. In the past, the Murim people decided on the 5 strongest warriors, and each clan in the 9 great clans had to earn the title. But now, the government which was controlling the Murim would give the grading. Interestingly, from a certain point on, the Murim warriors seemed to be obsessed with that too. Aren't they just being distracted? Is that why? Perhaps the root cause of it was something called the First Dimension Gate. A natural disaster of unknown origin which suddenly occurred 28 years ago. Humanity was threatened as unknown dangerous entities jumped out of the gates, which opened suddenly. At that time, the Murim warriors appeared. The Murim, which was considered to be the dark side of society, was revealed through that opportunity, and now everyone was aware of it. The press, phones with cameras, internet, there are problems. From the moment they were exposed to the public, the existence of Murim was no longer a legend. In addition, the Murim warriors couldn't disappear in the current state of the world, with gates being opened in succession, starting with the First Dimension Gate. Chun Yo-won, who was thinking about it all, asked Nano. Nano. Where are the State Council, the Murim Department, and the Murim Association? Right. In the case of the Murim Association, public institutions, and certain organizations, there is a limit to the data which can be collected through the wireless internet because they have their own operating system. Chun Yo-won frowned. Much of the material he wanted to know was missing. The Murim Association is registered as a Murim office and allowed grading, so ordinary people's information about Murim was only of the association. The same with the Dimension Gates. Again, it was controlled by the State Council to prevent civilians from accessing the information. In some ways, Dimension Gates were more strictly controlled than the Murim Association, and if any material was uploaded on the internet, it was immediately deleted. So bothersome. In the end, it meant that he had no chance but to move on from that topic. The simplest way to get information would be to infiltrate those places. No matter how different the system was, its data could be extracted if Nano was directly connected to the main computer. But everything is vague. We need a more direct clue. That way, he could decide how to approach it. Even though it was a different time axis that Nano had no idea about, there were some commonalities. That being said, not much has changed. For example, the energy I felt in the hospital. Chun Yo-won sensed certain energies while Jo Yusong was being treated. The internal energy from a very familiar harvesting technique. I felt it from someone before. Chun Yo-won, who reached the Heavenly Master level, was able to distinguish the characteristics of energy. Something flashed through Chun Yo-won's mind, who for a moment recalled the energies. Moyong clan, the Peng clan of Hebei. If he wasn't mistaken, then the energies he felt had to be of those 2 clans. Chun Yo-won was upset. It would have been better to get out of the car and talk to them. But now, he was so far away that he couldn't even sense their energies. Still, I got something. The fact that their descendants, the 5 great clans, are present in this age too, so my cult should exist too. The information that Chun Yo-won wanted to find out the most was anything about the Sky Demon Order. In order to return to his original era after arriving at an unfamiliar place, rather than struggling alone, he wanted to meet the people of the Sky Demon Order, which were like family to him. Was it Sky Corporation? In the future, where Nano was created by his descendant Chun Musong, the Sky Demon Order is called the Sky Corporation. Ah, right. Nano. Go on that wireless thing and search for the Sky Corporation. Understood. At Chun Yo-won's command, Nano started searching. The search didn't take long. A total of 7 groups were found. 7? Not 1, but 7? But, Nano's next words were puzzling. There are a total of 0 Sky Corporations in the Chinese government's territory. What? A world map in the form of a globe unfolded as augmented reality opened up. Ah! Exclamation. Although the information about it was transferred, it was still strange to see the entire world. At that time, the locations of the sky corporations were marked with red dots. However, none of them existed in the Chinese government's territory. No way. Chun Yo-won's eyes trembled. He thought that the Sky Demon Order existed under the name Sky Corporation. However, it was strange that it didn't exist in this place. Is there anything which was originally in Chinese territory but moved to another place? No. They are all foreign companies, and the heads are all foreigners. Photos of people appeared above the marked-up areas. Not a single one looked the same as his people. They were all foreigners. Chun Yo-won was frustrated. Why? In this era, traces of 2 of the 5 great clans, the Moyong clan and the Peng clan, were discovered. But it didn't make sense that the Sky Demon Order was nowhere to be found. The Sky Demon Order, which he led, had the power to engulf the entire Jianghu region. It was greater than the 5 great clans combined. Is it possible that the cult was destroyed in this time axis? There was no way of knowing. But if that was what happened, it would be a huge shock to Chun Yo-won, the lord of the Sky Demon Order. Chun Yo-won, who was at a loss for words, suddenly thought. Maybe it's under a different name? The time axis is different. And the level of Miram warriors here isn't as low as his descendant described. That being said, there was no guarantee that the Sky Demon Order would be the Sky Corporation. If that was the case, it made sense for the previous search to not have favorable results. Nano. Search for a company where a person with the name Moyong is the head or owner of it. Understood. The results were out immediately. A total of 1 company was found with the name Moyong in it. A company that has a total of 13 affiliates. As expected. Maybe if things went this way, perhaps he could find traces of the Sky Demon Order. Nano. Find a company where the owner has the name Chun. Understood. This, too, didn't take long. A total of 108 companies with the name Chun were found. What? Chun Yo-won was speechless. When he searched for Moyong, only 1 company came up, but when he searched for his own surname, so many companies came up. What the hell is Psy? Too many, just way too many. He was shocked for a moment but stayed calm. Although there were more companies than expected, it could be because they had potential. If we want to shorten the list, how do we do it? The companies weren't disclosing their information either. The company he searched for a while back was an automobile manufacturer, and it wasn't related to the Miram clan. The sedan suddenly stopped. We are here. Chun Yo-won opened his eyes at Jo Yusong's words. The black sedan stopped in front of a building 40 stories tall. When he got out, Jo Yusong led him to the entrance of the building. This is our headquarters. Entering the building, a spacious lobby lined with indigo-colored marble was revealed. In the lobby, a 5-meter-tall toy stood up in the center. There was an information desk behind it, with the company name written on it. 6 Road Toys. At Chun Yo-won, who was looking around, Jo Yusong said. 6 Road Toys. This is our company name. We launched around September of last year, so you may not know us, but as you can see, we started a toy manufacturing business. Toy? Right, the robot in the middle did seem like a toy. Jo Yusong smiled and pointed at the elevator to the right of the lobby. Our director is waiting. Let's go this way. Jo Yusong, who was about to lead him to the elevator, patted around his body as if he had forgotten something and searched for it. Come to think of it, I didn't get your full name. I need to introduce you to them directly. With that, Jo Yusong politely handed Chun Yo-won his business card. First, I will introduce myself. Jo Yusong, the chief of 6 Road Toys. A red and yellow paper business card. On the front was written 6 Road Toys, along with the name Jo Yusong, a phone number, and another number. You have an analog tick? If you give me your number, I will send you an electronic business card too. Some things didn't change over time. The business card. Chun Yo-won knew about it because of all the information which was transferred into his mind. His expression stiffened. Seeing that, Jo Yusong smiled and said, "You must have been shocked. Were you surprised that we are a new company? Although the Six Road Toys is a new launch, our performance is high thanks to the support of the head office. This is a place you can trust and rely on." Is this the head office's name? Chun Yo-won looked at the card with narrow eyes. On the back of the business card was the name of the head office. Blade 6. The name of a company in English, a name he would never forget. It was another name of the Blade God 6 martial clan, who fought for power with the Sky Demon Order and the Yulin.
Chapter 15. Scout Offer. Part 4. Blade 6. One of the 5 largest conglomerates in the current Chinese government. Although the world's population plummeted due to the gates, the Blade 6 still boasts overwhelming power and is the number 1 in the world. Last year, it formed a pro-social corporate image and was so well recognized that it was selected as the number 1 company people wanted to join. Sigh. The information which passed through Chun Yo-won's mind was basic information about the Blade 6. Blade God 6 martial clan. All the information was ordinary. However, the Blade 6 he knew was the name of a company from a distant future. This guy is proof. Jo Yusong in front of him was proof. Seeing that the head of an affiliated company knows martial arts, that must mean he knows about Murim. Nano. If the time axis is different, is there any chance that the Blade God is still alive? Chun Yo-won asked with a stiff face. The Blade God of the Blade God 6 martial clan, the head of the Blade 6. Nano's voice echoed. It's possible if the user failed to kill the Blade God before entering the time axis. Chun Yo-won wasn't happy about that information. Another possibility. I killed him just yesterday. Chun Yo-won had killed the Blade God in the time jet before falling into this era. If it was his own time, Chun Yo-won would have erased all traces of that clan in a single day. This is one funny situation. Chun Yo-won bit his lip. He couldn't find the Sky Corporation, but he managed to find the Blade God 6 martial clan. Moreover, he was being scouted. Sir? Jo Yusong couldn't hide his curiosity at the sudden change in atmosphere. His reaction was completely different from the one Jo Yusong expected from a person about to get hired by a big company. Is there anything that's making you uncomfortable? Jo Yusong asked. Since Chun Yo-won is an unpredictable character, he was cautious. Did he have a bad experience with the head office? Otherwise, there wouldn't be such a reaction. Chun Yo-won, who had a still expression, spoke. What's the name of the company's head? Creepy. A low voice filled with energy. There was no way Jo Yusong couldn't feel it. Civilians won't be able to breathe in the lobby. It was shocking. If this man lived his life like this, everyone would have noticed him. He decided to calm down. Ugh, if you can tell me why tell me the head's name. The voice, which was making him weak. Jo Yusong, who was so nervous that cold sweat broke out, said the name. It's GM Sonryong. GM Sonryong? Chun Yo-won frowned. He thought that the name Blade God would come out. The energy disappeared right away. WHHHH. Jo Yusong's legs, which would have given out if it continued, relaxed. What kind of life did he live? He forgot that they were still in the lobby. After barely calming his breath, Lee Hyun spoke. I heard that the president of the head office is famous among Murim warriors, didn't you know? What? Jo Yusong looked at the lawyer with shocked eyes. He spoke with a carefree expression as if nothing happened. No way, am I the only one who felt that just now? To live like that, To be able to force enough energy on a person to kill them. Qi is a kind of energy, but when used in high amounts, others can feel it. But Li Hyun didn't feel anything. I must have misunderstood. This man isn't at the beginning of the superior master level. He seems to have reached the end of it. Considering Chen Yowon's age, Zhou Yusong thought that he must be an entry superior master. But it seemed like he was wrong. At that time, Chen Yowon asked Li Hyun, "What do you mean by famous? You know that the president of the head office is the vice president of the Murim Association." Vice president? Chen Yowon's expression stiffened more at the words vice president. The basic information of the Murim Association, which Nano transferred, naturally popped into his mind. The association consisted of 12 executives, with the vice president and president above them. The members of Orthodox clans? It was said that the officers of the Murim Association were members of Orthodox clans. Although the names of the executives weren't disclosed on the website, officials in the Murim department and other similar fields seemed to know the executives. Blade God 6, no, Blade 6 is working with the Orthodox clans? Huh. Amazing. They were by no means orthodox. Rather, they walked on a path closer to violence. If necessary, they didn't mind taking hundreds of lives. You didn't know? No. At the words of Li Hyun, Chen Yowon shook his head. Since he only acquired basic information, he didn't know this. He doesn't know the president of the head office? I guess he really was a hidden Murim warrior. At Chen Yowon's reaction, Zhou Yusong thought to himself. If he didn't know the president of the head office, the most prominent figure in Murim, it was speculated that this man must have learned martial arts in a remote place like mountains. Only, he's a little out of control. They couldn't handle Chen Yowon. And Chen Yowon was so strong that he can control his energy exceptionally. For now, try conciliating with him, and if it doesn't work, we have no choice but to leave it to the director. Zhou Yusong organized his thoughts. If there's something that's making you uncomfortable, I can postpone the meeting to another. Didn't you say that we'll be meeting with the director of this company? Yes. Chen Yowon still had a stiff face. In the building, there seemed to be more than 100 warriors. Among them, 2 seemed to have a great amount of internal energy. Perhaps one of them is the director. Chen Yowon looked up and found the CCTV cameras installed in the lobby. There were 40. Much larger than the bureau. Which meant that the security was tight. Let's figure this place out first. If it was the past, Chen Yowon would have overturned the entire place. Because Chen Yowon was the kind to torture people for information and then kill them once he got what he wanted. However, it was tiring to do that when the Blade God's existence was neither confirmed nor denied. I can't even find my cult. There's no need to draw attention. Chen Yowon, who knew how the current world worked, decided to lay low. Of course, if that didn't work, he would go back to being himself. Fine. I will meet him. Where should I go? At his response, Zhou Yusong exhaled in relief. The 36th floor of the Six Road Toys building. The other floors were divided into departments and employees, but the 36th floor was dedicated to one person. It was because the owner of that floor had great authority. Of course, he wasn't the only one on the floor. 4 beautiful female secretaries and 12 security guards were stationed there. The glamorous office had a private bar. Swipe. There was a man with white hair in his early 40s swinging his golf club. The person who stood politely in front of him was General Manager Zhou Yusong. That is all. Director. The man was Yun Mun Pyong, the director of Six Road Toys. He was listening to the report. Swipe. He opened his mouth as he kept looking at the golf club. He cut off your hand because you were late? Yes. Quite an untamed bastard. Yun Munpyong put the golf club into his golf bag and sat down on the sofa. He sat with his legs crossed and drank his glass of whiskey all at once. And Jo Yusung spoke. If we can hold his reins properly, he's worthwhile. To be honest, if he has such a high level of skill, it's worth hiring him for the future. Are you saying that he isn't a card we play then discard? Right. Seeing Jo Yusung's face, Yun Munpyong smiled. How can you even think that after he cut off your hand? You must think that he really is useful? It's normal to feel ill will towards such a person. Still, Jo Yusung was speaking objectively. This was the reason Yun Munpyong used him. Good. I'll take a look and judge him. As Manager Jo said, if he truly is a superior master, it's a waste to use then discard him. Thank you. Jo Yusung bowed to express his gratitude. And the director gestured for him to hold a meeting. As Jo Yusung left, Yun Munpyong touched his hair and muttered. TCH, Manager Jo. This time your eyes were wrong. If he was a superior master, I would have noticed his energy the moment he entered the floor. Director Yun Munpyong. One of the two superior masters assigned to this company. In Yun Munpyong's mind, only a superior master can sense another superior master. Of course, considering that this kid was someone in his early 20s and talented, he decided to let Jo Yusung bring him in. Shoo! Yun Munpyong grabbed the jacket, which was on the hanger, and put it on. If it was a meeting, he had to look his part. Keek! The door opened, and someone entered along with Jo Yusung. Oh ho! Yun Munpyong was shocked. Seeing Chen Yowon in a historical costume was really shocking. He has never seen anyone grow their hair like that in today's world, except for celebrities. This is Yun Munpyong, the director. Jo Yusung introduced him. And although he reported to him earlier, he spoke to the director. He's the person I mentioned before. Chen Yowon only revealed his first name and not his surname. Originally, he thought about telling them his full name to see the Blade 6 reaction. But he soon changed his mind. I can't give myself away. This wasn't even the main company. And he can't give these lowly people his name. If the Blade God lived in this era, then there's a chance that the Blade God would run away to be cautious. Yun Munpyong reached out for a handshake. Nice to meet you. I'm Yun Munpyong. Since I'm older, I will speak without formalities. Chen Yowon looked at his hand. It was because he wasn't used to the Western greeting style. But soon, information popped into his mind, and he shook his hand. And said, Yowon. Shit. Jo Yusung's face went stiff. He was meeting the director of a company. The kid should at least use honorifics. He looked at Yun Munpyong out of curiosity to see his eyes trembling. He was holding back. As if it didn't bother him, he spoke. Hoo, it seems like the young friend here only learned martial arts and not social norms. I see. For now, let's sit and talk. Yun Munpyong pointed to the sofa. Yun Munpyong sat on the single sofa with his legs crossed and pressed a button on his phone. I have guests. Bring some hot tea. Yes. Director. Not long after, a female secretary in a short skirt came in. After the cups were set down and she left, the director spoke. Please. He took a sip. Chen Yowon, who looked at him, also took a sip from his teacup. The tea was good. It's Longjing tea. I like whiskey more than tea, but this is an exception. He put down his cup and continued. You may have heard this in advance. This company loves talented people. Even talented people without a background like you will be treated fairly and justly. Ah. Jo Yusung frowned. There was supposed to be a briefing, but now the director was talking in his own flow. I don't know if you've heard it. I don't like formalities. And I don't like to talk about the past either. Yun Munpyong reached out towards his desk. A tablet on the desk moved towards the sofa. He was trying to show off his skills. Tuck. 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 After Yun Munpyong tapped the tablet a few times, a number was displayed. 3 billion won plus a monetary unit of the Asian Union. It was his arrogant way of showing off 3 billion won, 2.6 million USD. Considering the annual salary of a Murim warrior who has reached the peak of the super master level by the Murim Association standards, 3 billion won is higher. And with that, we also give bonuses for completing missions. Huh? Director. There seems to be some misunderstanding. This person is. When Jo Yusung tried to correct him, the director reached out and stopped him. And said, there seems to be some misunderstanding because Manager Jo has lower skills than you. Even so, at that level, this salary isn't low. The director leaned back, pulled a cigarette out of his pocket, and ignited it. Shoo. Huh. If you follow orders well and complete the missions you're given, I can become your sponsor. Right now, I'm the director here, but once the company stabilizes, I will return to the head office. He was saying that rather than keeping his position here, he would return to the main office. The Blade 6 had a reputation that even a kid would know. Exhaling the smoke, he asked, how is it? To him, it was an offer that no one would refuse. However, Chun Yo-won's words were unexpected. You seem to think that money is everything. From the start, you've talked about missions, but if you want to hire someone, shouldn't you disclose what you're doing? Ha 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 ha. The director, who was speechless, laughed out loud. And said, I see that you don't know your place. Who do you think pulled you out of the bureau? Even if I treat you this nice, you act arrogant until the very end. Ha! Bang! As the director slammed his palm on the table, the marble table split in half and fell. Sigh. Jo Yusung sighed. As he thought he would, his director burst out. Well, whether you sign the contract or not, I need to shorten your reins. You did well. Whack. As soon as his words finished, the director tried to grab Chun Yo-won's throat. It was then. Grab. Ugh. Chun Yo-won grabbed the director's wrist. Yun Munpyong, who didn't expect that, looked at Jo Yusung. Was he right? From the start, he couldn't sense the kid's energy. Even now, he couldn't feel any energy from him. However, noticing and blocking the attack meant that he was hiding his energy. A guy in his 20s is on par with me? He couldn't believe it. He couldn't reach the beginning stage of the superior master level until he hit his 40s. Displeased, he raised his internal energy and tried to shake off Chun Yo-won's hand. Let go. But. Grab. Despite his wrist being let go, he couldn't move. Yun Munpyong's eyes went wide. His internal energy is.